You know, when you walk into a really great restaurant or maybe an upscale retail store and you instantly feel this vibe, the air itself just has energy, right?
Oh, gotcha.
And usually you'd credit the lighting or the decor, but what if the thing actually controlling your mood is hanging right over your head, completely disguised? Okay, let's unpack this. In today's deep dive, we are looking into the hidden engineering of commercial spaces by examining a highly specialized piece of audio tech, the QSC AD-P-HALO. It's basically a modern chandelier, but instead of showering the room with light, it drops perfectly tuned, high-performance audio.
Right. It functions as acoustic architecture hiding in plain sight. And to understand how a single hanging device can shape an entire room's atmosphere, we really have to look at its deceptive physical design. I mean, this isn't just a basic speaker in a plastic shell.
Right, the source material says it's a pretty heavy system, right?
Yeah, a 22.5-pound, fully integrated system. It crams a 6.5-inch paper subwoofer and four smaller, like 2.75-inch neodymium satellite transducers into one single rugged ABS enclosure.
Okay, I actually have to push back on the physics of that because traditionally, if you want deep bass, you need a massive wooden subwoofer box,
Oh,
right?
exactly, usually hidden in a corner
It's
somewhere.
anchored to the floor so it can use the room for resonance. So how can packing a sub into a pendant hanging in midair not just result in a rattling, muddy acoustic mess?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the engineering solves that exact physics problem. The housing uses what is called a bass reflex design.
A bass reflex design.
Yeah. So instead of relying on a solid floor to anchor those low frequencies, the enclosure actually captures the sound waves coming off the back of the speaker cone,
Oh, wow.
right? It channels those rear waves through a tuned port to reinforce the bass coming out the front. It essentially creates its own internal resonance.
So it's basically using its own acoustic exhaust to beef up the low end and completely bypassing the need for floor contact. That is wild.
It really is. And that creates massive business value. Because for a commercial integrator, this is an out-of-the-box solution, retailing around $910.
Which isn't bad considering what it does.
Not at all. They don't have to wire a separate floor sub, tune a crossover network, or, spend hours trying to hide a giant vibrating box. They just hang this pendant, and it instantly delivers premium, high-end sound.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. It is not just relying on the physical enclosure to sound good. The sources mention something called intrinsic correction EQ voicings via QSYS.
Yes, the software side of it.
Right, which honestly sounds a bit like marketing jargon. I mean, how does a hanging piece of plastic actually correct its own sound?
Well, it ties into the processing amplifiers driving the system. The manufacturer has meticulously measured the physical and acoustic flaws of this specific speaker design in a lab. And they take that profile and build a software filter. So before the sound even leaves the amplifier and travels up the wire to the ceiling, the software proactively adjusts the frequencies to cancel out any physical distortions the pendant might cause.
Wow, so it's neutralizing its own mechanical imperfections before they even happen? That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the power specs are no joke either. It handles 200 watts of RMS power, projecting sound in a 110-degree conical pattern.
So instead of just blasting audio at one specific table, it's showering a wide radius evenly.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most critical spec dictating that vibe you mentioned is the frequency range. It goes down to 40 hertz and up to 20 kilohertz.
40 hertz is pretty low for a ceiling speaker, right?
It really is. Hitting that 40 hertz low-end extension is the magic number that completely eliminates the need for any other subwoofers in the room. It completely surpasses traditional two-way background speakers by giving the system what we call dynamic headroom.
Meaning it can easily fill those demanding loud environments like clubs or busy retail stores.
Yes, without the audio ever compressing or sounding strained at all.
Which totally explains why they gave it an IP54 ingress rating, because a busy gym or a humid restaurant patio is a brutal environment for sensitive acoustics.
Absolutely brutal.
But this thing is specifically ruggedized to just sit up there in the rafters and keep driving the bass.
Right, which raises an important point about environmental design. We often assume the atmosphere of a space is just organic, but it's actually heavily calculated. We are constantly being influenced by frequencies and engineering we don't consciously notice.
Yeah, it's invisible but highly calculated. So what does this all mean? It means this 22-pound acoustic Swiss Army knife drives the vibe of commercial spaces without all the installation headaches.
Exactly.
The next time you walk into a restaurant and instantly feel energized by the vibe, look up at the ceiling. Are you reacting to the decor? Or are you reacting to the invisible, carefully engineered physics of a pendant speaker hiding in plain sight?